I'm about to introduce the next speaker, and he goes by the name of Sean Tillman. One thing about Sean is he's hugely passionate about mental wellness. And Sean essentially helps equip others to have the essential skills to support people with their mental health. He also works within communities, really getting rid of the stigma and helping them to see mental health in a more positive light. And his story or his talk is called Everyone Has Mental Health. And it's essentially about how vital mental wellness is for all of us. And using his own story, he shares essentially how together, by coming together, we can create spaces where we can all support others with their mental wellness. So can we give a huge round of applause to Sean Tillman, please?
All right, thank you all for being here today. I almost didn't make it to the stage today, not because I wasn't invited. Thank you, Mo, for inviting me. But because there were times in my life where I could barely get out of bed, where I was battling intrusive thoughts, sometimes those thoughts were suicidal, and I was drowning in depression. It was a really hard time, but I wore a mask so nobody knew it. I wore a happiness mask, I like to call it, but behind that happiness mask, I was drowning inside. Flash forward to today, I'm doing well, I'm here with you all, and I can talk about what I've been through. It's been a long journey from darkness to lightness to where I am now, and I want to share with you parts of that story today. It might be hard at times for me, so please be patient. But it has been a wonderful journey. A big part of that journey was me battling stigma around reaching out for help around my mental health. It took me a long time to get there. Now, everyone has mental health, as my topic says. Don't forget that. Everyone has mental health, and mental health is a spectrum. We are all on it, whether we have good mental health or we have poor mental health. I was on the side of poor mental health for a long time, and I didn't even know it. I'll take you back to tell you some of that story in a minute, but first, my name is Sean Tillman. My pronouns are he, him. I am a coach. I am a mental health first aid instructor. I am also a partner, and I am also a person who has lived experience of anxiety and depression. So I'll take you back to where all of that poor mental health started developing. When I was quite young, people were really mean to me. I was an easy target, especially to boys. I had feminine mannerisms. I had a high-pitched voice, still kind of do. I also liked some quote-unquote girly things. And to top it all off, I'm going to take off my shoes, but it's to make a point. I could only walk on my tiptoes. Physically, I could not walk flat-footed. You can see I walk flat-footed today, but I'll get to that in a minute. But the bullying, it was incessant. It happened constantly throughout my youth, all the way up until I was 18. It only started relenting in high school when, again, I was friends with a lot of girls. When the boys started realizing, oh, they can't be mean to me because they want to date some of the girls that I'm friends with, which wasn't great. But anyways, one of the main things that they used to say to me in a very negative way was that I was gay. I didn't even know what the term gay meant at that time, and it took me a long time to actually understand what that meant. All I knew was that these boys were saying it was a bad thing, and they were using it in a negative light. So in my brain, gay equals bad, and I was told that constantly throughout my childhood. Little did they know, I actually did end up being gay my whole life, so maybe they were onto something, but they were mean about it. That's the main point. They were very mean, and I battled a lot of demons because they were mean. Now back to my toes. So again, I could only walk on my tiptoes. When I was 11, before I went to junior high school in the US, that's you're going into a bigger school with a lot more people. I had a conversation with my parents, and I had elective surgery on my feet because I didn't want to be made fun of for walking on my toes anymore. I thought that would fix things. It did not. People stopped making fun of me because I no longer walked on my toes, that's for sure. But all those other things I mentioned, they still made fun of me for. So that was really hard growing up. And then, alongside that, there was a lot of things happening with my family life. When I was 11 was a big year, big negative year for me. My brother, who was 17 at the time, He's doing well today. He had a heart attack in the shower. My dad brought him back to life in front of me. That was quite traumatic. That same year, my father was an alcoholic. He drunk drove with me home from swim practice. He was swerving all over the place. Thank God somebody called the cops. The cops came and they pulled us over 3 blocks from our house and arrested him in front of me. That was really hard for me. I loved my dad, but I was also terrified of him. My mom then kicked him out of the house, rightfully so. He had a lot of things to work on. So that was happening in my family life. Then there was all these things being taught to me culturally. Boys don't show emotion. Boys are tough. They need to be tough. So, okay, don't show emotion. That's fine. I was also told one time by my uncle, I was babysitting my little cousins, and they wanted to do a little dress-up party and have tea and stuff. It was really cute. So I tried to fit into one of their little cute little princess dresses, and even the little heels, which my feet were far too big for. And my uncle chastised me when he found out. He said, "You're giving them the wrong impression. That's not what boys do." So I was being told all of these things, and I was being made fun of, and it was just a really hard time growing up. How did I cope? I didn't really. I just shoved it all inside. I put on a happy face and pretended like everything was okay. I didn't tell anyone about the bullying, and no one really suspected anything. The only reason my parents knew about the bullying for the surgery was because they had seen it. That was the only reason. Everything else they had no idea about. And how would they? I was a very outgoing kid. I was captain of the water polo and swim team. I was in student leadership. I got good grades. I didn't make a fuss. I was a lifeguard. I did all these things. And I think that's what helped keep me afloat a lot of that time, was having a purpose. But inside, I was just so sad all the time. Flash forward, I move on to university. And I moved 4.5 hours away from home to go to university. And I thought, I can start fresh. No one will really know me here. This is going to be a great time. But what they don't tell you is when you think you're going to start fresh, your emotional baggage follows you no matter how far you go from home. And there was a lot of things that happened at university, a lot of great things. I had the best time at university. I'm not going to lie about that. It was great, but it was also a huge moment of growth for me, and also one of my deepest, darkest times. I was starting to grow my mind. I was starting to open my mind to new ideas. I was becoming my own. University is it's a time where you are learning about yourself, and it's a very formative period of one's life. So at university, I was starting to meet gay people who were out loud and proud, and it was amazing. And I was like, that's great. I support them 100%, but that can't be me, because I still had in my mind that gay equals bad. I had a lot still to learn. There was a lot that happened at university. And it all came to a head after my first year at university. I stuck around in the summer because I didn't want to go home, because there was a lot of family drama going on at home, and I wanted to stay in this new place where I was continuing to learn about myself. I ended up going to the dining commons with a friend, and he had just got back from studying abroad. And he was telling me all about his great time studying abroad, and it was a great conversation. And then the conversation turned to me. And he asked, "How are you doing?" I was like, yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing great. And then he asked a little follow-up, and he said, "How are you really doing?" And in that moment, I broke. That moment literally changed the trajectory of my life. Just that simple question. I just started crying. I started telling him about my confusion about my identity. I started talking about all the things that happened to me when I was younger. Everything started to come out. He just listened. It was the kindest thing he could do. And then at the very end of that, he encouraged me to go seek professional help at the student mental health services. But I thought at the time, oh no, I can't do that. I can't do that. And there were a few different reasons. One, mental health. Things are being told to me. I have to push down my feelings. Yeah, there was that. But then also, I had a career path in mind that I was gung-ho. I was going to do it. I wanted to be in the FBI. I know, it doesn't really seem like that today. But I wanted to be in the FBI. I went to open days. I went to all those things and everything. I wanted to stop the bad guys, etc. But the 3 things they always told you at those open days: go to a good school, get good grades. Okay, can do that. Don't do drugs. We test you for that, and we do a lie detector test. Okay, easy. 3rd thing, you can't have anything about mental health on your record. You would think they would want people who are well adjusted to work in those positions of powers, but I digress. So that was in my mind too. And my friend told me, would you rather go down this one life path you thought you wanted and probably still be sad? Or would you rather open up a whole bunch of other opportunities? There's so many other fields, there's so many other areas you can go into and have the opportunity to be happy. That was an easy choice for me. So 2.5 hours or an hour later that day, I showed up in front of Student Mental Health Services, walked back and forth for 2.5 hours, finally plucked up the courage to go inside and make an appointment. I went to that appointment, but stigma still persisted a bit. I was willing to talk, but the second they brought up medication, I was like, nope, that's not going to happen. I'll get to that a bit more in a minute. But that began the start of my 2-year therapy journey. I grew a lot in those 2 years. A lot happened. I became more comfortable with myself. I talked about my identity. I started to love myself. I rephrased things in my head. Gay equals happy. Literally, gay equals happy. How did I not clock that before? And I became really comfortable with who I was. It took a long time though. But during that time, there was also a setback. 2 months into when I started therapy, my dad passed away suddenly. That was really hard. I had a lot that I was trying to work through. And with him here, it would have probably been a bit easier. But he wasn't there anymore, so I had to work through it on my own. So that was hard. But I came through on the other side of that to a better place. I even changed my major. I started studying psychology, and I decided I didn't quite want to be a therapist. Instead, I became a mental health first aid instructor, and I get to share my story, but I also get to teach people how to recognize signs of people who are developing poor mental health. I get to teach people the resources and also how to listen and support people who are going through things. I wanted to do that because I wanted people to have the resources that I didn't have so that no one would have to feel the way that I felt. And I love doing that. It's an incredible thing, and I love doing it with Mo. Now, we all have setbacks in our lives, so I'll flash forward a bit. I moved to London 6 years ago from California, very sunny place. I moved in the dead of winter, December to be exact. I arrived December 1st. It was a hard time. It was a hard transition. But I moved for love. My now engaged fiance, so that's exciting. But it was hard, and I was diagnosed with depression. I was diagnosed with anxiety. I was also diagnosed with seasonal affective disorder. I was really struggling. But at that point, I knew the support that I needed, and I sought it out because I had what I knew from the past, and therapy worked in the past for me. I even decided to try medication this time. It took a lot of time and a lot of stigma to get rid of, to get me to that point, to think about trying medication. I don't want to lie to any of you. I tried a few different medications, and they didn't quite work for me, but I know that they work for so many other people, and that's a big point I want to make. Everyone's mental health journey is very different. Some people it's therapy, some people it's medication, some people it's a mix, some people it is mindfulness, some people it's support groups, or a community like this one. Everyone has a different support journey, and you have to find out what works best for you and use that. So now, I'm bringing you sort of towards the close, and I want you to remember that mental health is a spectrum. We all have mental health, which is why it's so important that we normalize the conversation around mental health. It's extremely important, and you can do so by sharing parts of your story like I have today. I don't recommend that you speak your mental health journey to a whole room, but find someone you trust, find a professional, and talk to them. Share your story, or listen. Listening is important too. And remember, you have to find what works best for you. When you share your story, or when others share their stories, it helps strip away some of the shame that is associated with those stories, and it helps break stigma that keeps people suffering in silence. No one should have to suffer in silence or feel like reaching out for help is a sign of weakness. Speaking up and seeking help is a sign of strength. And I want to close by saying, I want you all to reflect, think about where you're at on that mental health spectrum today, and ask yourself, am I doing what I need to be doing to prioritize my mental health? Then reach out to a trusted friend, family member, or a professional. Share your story again, or listen. And also remember that sometimes the happiest people, like I was, were hiding behind a happiness mask. And sometimes a simple question like, how are you really doing? If it's said with intention and if it's said with empathy and it's said out of genuineness, can make all the difference. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you. Wow, what a story. And yeah, what a delivery of such a simple but kind of forgotten message that, yeah, everyone's got mental health. And it really is. It's that kind of, that spectrum that you talk about. So eloquently put. Thank you so much, Sean.